Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of WeedBudz Radio. I am your host, Rye Russell. I am so excited to talk with you all today because we all have very unique journeys into cannabis. And because cannabis is so new, I don't know that any of us have a traditional path into the cannabis industry. And that's why I wanted to have our next guest join us to share with you about the opportunity of doing exactly what you're doing and enjoying it and bringing those skill sets to an industry that desperately needs those skill sets. We're building this and we're building it together. So I hope from our conversation today, you can see yourself, should you want an opportunity in the cannabis industry, truly having one, because there's opportunities in this industry across the country. And there are still so many opportunities in my home state of Maine, where our next guest, Heather Sullivan, is joining us from. Heather, thank you.
It's great to be here with you guys today. I absolutely love talking about how folks can journey into the cannabis industry in the right way, and what the opportunities are here in Maine and elsewhere for folks that maybe come from a more traditional background like myself.
I love that. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to talk with us about that. And before we go into those opportunities, tell us a little bit about your career. Where were you? What were you doing before you brought your skills to the cannabis industry?
So I had a 13-year career with a large insurance carrier in our home state of Maine. So Rye, both of us are in Maine. Folks from Maine will probably recognize who that carrier is. It was a good career. It was a great career, I should say. So I have traditionally worked with lawyers. I am not a lawyer, but most of my career has been working within the legal field. And I found myself at the insurance company doing compliance and regulatory affairs. So I did a lot of research writing. I did a lot of supporting our business operations. So business operations would have an idea or an improvement that they wanted to make, and then we would take it and help them bring it to fruition in a regulatory compliant way. And I did that, like I said, for about 13 years. I was at the time, I considered myself a lifer of that company. I would have stayed, ended my career there, retired from there. I met my husband there. I had a baby while I worked there. Very good company to work for. And then some things changed for me while I was there. And in my final year there, I had traditionally worked for a very high performing team, very strong managers that considered their staff as capable as the lawyers. So what that means for somebody like me is that I had a ton of autonomy, I had a ton of respect, and I was able to make a lot of decisions on my own, which is something that's very important for me in my career. I love to be the expert about something that a lot of other people don't know about. The regulatory structure of insurance is actually strangely similar to cannabis. Like cannabis, insurance is governed by 50 states. Each state is a little bit different. The rules are a little bit different. The regulations are a little bit different in each state. So when you are a national company, like that, my insurance company was a national player, we had 50 state compliance requirements.
Sure.
So I got very good at understanding the differences between different state laws and regs and what was allowed in one state, what wasn't allowed in another, and how we could take a national platform and also be able to function within it. So streamlining things when possible, and then a lot of things we weren't able to streamline and had to be very state specific. So that's where I started.
Amazing.
At my 13th year, we had a change in management. It was a significant change for me. And I'll be honest with you, Rye, I have a person, either you love me or you don't get me. That's my personality. I've always considered myself to be a square peg in a round hole when it comes to the corporate environment. I can do it. I'm good at it. But my personality sometimes, I don't have a very corporate-y personality, let's just say.
I get that.
Yeah. So that was always really a challenge for me in the insurance industry. I was always trying to act differently than who I really am. The other piece to that equation was I'm a long-term cannabis consumer. I've been a cannabis consumer since my 20s. So the entire time I was working there, I was in effect hiding a pretty significant part of who I am. In that industry, it was pre-adult use legalization. You don't talk about cannabis. You don't even make jokes about it. You know, every single time someone would say, oh, let's go out for a drink, I would want to say, I don't drink, but I'll smoke a joint. And you just couldn't do that there. During my time there, I've never posted on social media about cannabis before this. And luckily, I say that now, luckily I was actually let go from the company. I was reorganized out of the company in early 2016. So I found myself in early 2016 with no
a world of
job.
possibility.
Yes, in a very scary way for me. You know, I have historically put a lot of myself into my work. So to be suddenly without that, you know, again, like I said, I thought I was going to be a lifer. I thought that was the end game for me. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was super unhappy because I was hiding that part of my life. And I was super unhappy because I was a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. And that can grate on you after a while, but it's a low level grating. So that's one thing that I'd love to tell listeners is that if you're maybe feeling that sometimes, if you're feeling like, oh, the idea of doing this for the rest of my life, I can't imagine it. Maybe cannabis is the right place for you to look.
I so get that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of us put ourselves into our work and we're so committed to it. And then sometimes the world changes for reasons outside of our control. And what we realized is we probably were not genuinely or authentically happy anyway. And this world of possibility opens up and it's scary. Like, I totally remember when the world of possibility opened up for me and my heart's racing. I'm sweating. What am I going to do tomorrow? What comes next? And within all of that, I found an opportunity for myself in something where I'm no longer the square and the round hole somewhere else. I get to be the round hole blocking out squares. And so, Heather, tell me, you have this realization and this opportunity. How did you become the circle?
So first I smoked a ton of weed. I'll be honest with you. That's what I did first. My first month or two of being out of work, big transition. I was depressed, no doubt about it. And so I started listening to a lot of podcasts. And I came across a podcast. It's called Marijuana Today. It's actually a podcast that I am now a host of at times.
Amazing.
But I came across it. Yeah, I came across it. Listening to that podcast was the first time that I realized that you could be a professional in this industry. You could have a passion for it. You could advocate, or not even could advocate. We need to advocate in this industry. That show, I remember the first guest I ever listened to. One was Betty Aldworth. She is a personal hero of mine. She's actually a friend of mine now. And I heard Betty talk about things like radical incrementalism, which is moving the needle on public perception of things in a very slow and methodical way. You take baby steps to get people where you want them to be. That's where I first came across Chris Crane. Chris is the president of Forefront. He is the first person that I realized you could be super intelligent in this space, that we need thought leaders in this space. And Chris, to me, is one of those people.
Can I pause you right there for a second?
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Chris Crane is one of the reasons this show exists.
Really? Tell me the story.
Heather, I would love to share this story with you. I thank you for sharing that with me, because that was very powerful. So when I was nervous and a world of possibility opened up to me, and I knew that I was done being a square in an industry I didn't belong in, and I knew that it was time to go find a way that I could build community, like I did with the drive-in. Why was the drive-in successful? I built a community. I genuinely loved it, but I also loved the world. There was other things I wanted to do. And when the world of possibility really opened up for me, I realized like that community piece was so critical. And I didn't have that where I was. And so when I said, I want to be in the cannabis industry, and what I love about this show is because it helped me discover my place, as it's helped so many, kind of find their place, and like conversations, sharing like we're having today. And I launched a show, the initial version of WeedBudz, and it failed. There was a lot of dynamics at play there that failed. And so I went to MJ BizCon to relaunch, to rebrand. I had a new structure for the show, a new platform. And I went to this conference, and there was a breakout that you could participate in, and you were listening to somebody speak on the future of cannabis. And that individual was Chris Crane. And I'll tell you, Heather, I had never, before that point, we did not have guests that were aligned with the mission of the show, which was to show people the opportunity within cannabis. Chris Crane helped me discover the platform for the show. When I heard him speak, I messaged him immediately while he was still on stage. I want people to get this. I was scared. This is somebody that Heather has now told you without me saying is one of the thought leaders of the industry. I'm nobody, and I've been in the industry for 3 months with a failed podcast, and I'm just about to launch a new show. And I sent him a message and said, wow, I am inspired. I know my place in the cannabis industry. My job is to document pioneers, thought leaders, and innovators in this space, because y'all are too busy doing. People like Heather and her team, people like Chris Crane and his team, they're too busy doing that they miss some of the magic around. And I've been to a lot of grand openings of Curaleaf here in Maine, and they miss some of the magic of the days. And I get to document it. And Heather, I've got one more story that I'm going to selfishly share with you about this.
Please.
And about you being in your sphere before we even really knew it. I'm in the middle. I have no idea who I am. I'm this podcaster, Chris Crane. I send him a message. He finishes. 45 minutes after he finishes, there's a connection email between his assistant and me. Right? I would love to come on your show. Heather, we had like 4 published episodes at this point. Like 4 published episodes. And him saying yes opened a world of possibility for me that I am a podcast host in this industry. He said yes, he came to my show. And what I wanted to do selfishly, I wanted to share some of what he shared with the investors of the conference with the public. I wanted the public to have the information that I paid for to be in that room, because it was so powerful. And he's so much more powerful than this room of elite thought leaders. He was the thought leader of thought leaders. And I wanted to share him with the world. Helped launch me. It helped launch me because it helped create a platform and a structure for the show. And it is to document those that are doing, and to just learn and provide opportunities for the audience to see where their place is. And I wanted to share one more thing before we move on about these opportunities in our community here in Maine. And that's in Bangor. at the grand opening in Bangor, this all came ahead for me, was Ethan and I showed up, as we do, and we meet with our friend Abby, and we see this showroom. Beautiful showroom. And
it is gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. And the new one in South Portland is absolutely stunning. And we're in here. Scott's there. The leaders of Curaleaf, Maine are here. And what I saw was a community of individuals orchestrate the best ribbon cutting I had ever seen. And what you all will never know, Abby knows this, but what the rest of you don't know until it's time to know, and now you know, is when Ethan was filming the ribbon cutting in Bangor, somebody arrived late and we were about to take the photo. And I was in tears on the way home, just the honor I felt. Like, that's history. You all made me a part of that. But I have something on film of somebody arriving late just before the photo, and somebody from the Curaleaf team that was unable to be in the photo because they were going to take the photo. And we have documented that person that arrived late, that got out of their car and ran to be a part of the group to take the camera so that individual could go be a part of the group. And that individual, I have said, I can do another one of these. Get in there. And Ethan and I, when we were watching the film on how we were going to put together the story of that, we were blown away by the teamsmanship, the camaraderie, and the community of, I would love to be in that photo, but we'll have another shot, you go. And there was a connection between those two people that we caught on camera. There was a gratitude exchanged that was unspoken. The photo was taken, and now this piece of history that everybody's going to see as a perfect shot, Ethan and I have context to why that shot is so perfect. That's when I knew what my role was in this industry.
That is awesome. Oh, I love that you noticed. I mean, that's something that just kind of happened in real time. So very few people probably even noticed what you noticed. And honestly, I think it speaks to the kind of people that we bring or that come into this industry. We care about others, whether it's our fellow coworkers, it's our customers and our patients, it's our vendors, it's our partners out, it's our marketing partners out there. If there's one thing I would say that's different about cannabis, I mean, there's a lot of things that are different about cannabis, but one of my favorite things is the level of care that people have for each other. In a world right now that is just so crazy and feels so separate oftentimes, whether it's because of the pandemic, it's because of political leanings, how you feel about the vaccine or don't feel about the vaccine. People in cannabis really, truly care about each other. It's almost like it can kind of paper over some of our other differences sometimes. So that is a wonderful story, Rye. I love that.
Well, and when you were just saying that, Heather, you had mentioned something earlier in the show that there's a right way to get in the cannabis industry. There's a place for anybody that wants one.
Yes.
I think you and I both agree on that. If you want a place, truly want a place. I don't know that you can do this and just see the opportunity. I've seen a lot of people get in here because of capitalism.
Yep.
It doesn't work that way.
I've seen a lot of people leave for the same reason, I will say, Rye.
Facts. So how do we do this right?
For me, at least, a couple things came to a head for me. I heard the podcast. I knew, or I had heard, there were a few news stories locally about an effort to put together a citizens initiative in Maine to pass adult use. I knew that in Maine, the opportunities that were available to me in the market the way it currently looked. I'm not a grower. That is not my strong suit at all. I'm a paper pusher. I'm a desk jockey. I am very comfortable that that is what I bring to the table because it's necessary. So I don't have to be a retail superstar. I don't have to be a great grower. But there wasn't a ton of opportunity in Maine at that time. So I started thinking, it was funny. I was on the phone with my best gal pal, and I had very little in my life at that time that I was excited about. And I was going on and on about this podcast and something that I'm pretty sure it was Betty and Chris that they were saying about the industry. You know, I would always tell her like, oh, I didn't realize this, or, oh, did you know that, you know, drug policy has caused these problems in our society? And she turned to me very honestly and said, I wish you could find something to do that made you as passionate as this. And to my credit, I said, I think I want to do this. And it was like that light bulb moment where I said, okay, this is my time. I had a little bit of money saved up. We have a campaign going on. This is my time. I knew that in order for me to be able to have a career, to stay in the state that I love, to raise a son here, I've got a 12-year-old. So, and he was about, I guess he was about 7 then. I knew, or I felt that the only way that was going to happen is if we legalized adult use in Maine. That's the only way the opportunity is really going to come. So I put on my big girl panties and I sent an email. I just sent a blind email out to the leader of the campaign, David Boyer. I'm sure you've met David. David and I met for coffee in Portland on 4/20, strangely enough. I went into that meeting, I was ready to sell myself, like, you know, I have these skill sets, you need me to, you know, I was just trying to volunteer on the campaign.
What we're used to.
Yeah.
What doers are used to. We're going to get it done.
Copy of my resume, you know, the whole 9 yards. And we sat down and chatted for a little while. And then at the end of the conversation, David said, well, you don't bother me that much. So do you want to come and sit at a booth with us this week? And I said, yes. And that's
authentic communication from David Boyer, by the way. That is real talk.
David's always going to give you real talk. There's no doubt about it. So I did it. I went to, it was really funny. I went to the Republican convention up in Augusta. Yeah, I think it was Augusta. I don't think it was Bangor. It was Augusta. It might have been Bangor. Drove up, sat in a booth for the first time in my life. I had never done that kind of advocacy work. I had never.
Was it scary?
Oh, petrifying. Absolutely petrifying. The commitment that I feel towards cannabis, the commitment that I feel towards people having the right to consume a substance that's safer than alcohol, the opportunity that I think that cannabis brings states and localities, people in general, that I was able to really push my fear aside in a lot of ways. I'm also a very social girl, and over time I've really learned to just jump in. So, you know, I listened to David, I read the materials, and then I just kind of started jumping in and chatting with people and hearing, you know, in that environment, really what you're trying to do is you're trying to hear what people, you know, when you're advocating, you're trying to hear what people are saying, what their concerns are. And then you want to address those concerns in a rational way. I wasn't very good at it, but I did it. And I kept going back. I kept doing it. And eventually, I was feeling a lot of, you know, in addition to this, I was feeling a lot of pressure from friends and family around what the hell are you doing? We think it's really nice that you're participating in this, you know, in the civics side of things. But sure. What the hell are you doing? Like, what about your career? What about your future? What are you going to do for a job? So I got a little sneaky, I guess. And I figured we're not guaranteed. This is not a guarantee. We're not guaranteed to win this election. In fact, the election, we only won it by 4,022 votes. Yeah. I know that because I actually went and counted votes during a recount. So I know what those numbers were. I got nervous right around the summer. I got very nervous. I have a large family of achievers. I was nervous about kind of changing my path with no real known future in it. You know, once the campaign's over, for good or for bad, it's over. So I decided I needed something to fill my resume with. So I went back to school to get my MBA during that time. So I figured if we do well in the election, then that's only going to benefit me in getting a job in the future. And if we don't do well, then that's the space filler in my resume. I can just say,
oh my gosh, this is
I
so good.
I went back to school. So what I did, I was very smart about how this happened. I decided to do my MBA program online with Husson College. You're probably familiar with Husson. It's a Maine-based college out of Bangor. One of the things that I was able to do is I did an MBA, traditional MBA, but every assignment, every class, every discussion that I had, I actually did it about the cannabis industry. So if I was in a marketing class, I would talk about the challenges of marketing in cannabis. If I was in an accounting class, I would talk about, I would write papers about 280E. When we did, organization development, I talked about things like startups and what kind of people fit well in startups. So while I was getting educated, I was also educating myself on the cannabis industry, and I was also advocating for positive cannabis, for the regulations that I was trying to get put into place. So from that, I actually was able to get, MPP, Marijuana Policy Project, which is a great organization that supports most, if not all, of the major initiatives that have passed in different states throughout the country. They were running the campaign. I actually got them to give me an internship. So now I'm paying to get an MBA. I literally paid to volunteer for MPP. But it worked out really well for me. After the internship ended, then I finally went to work for MPP. So I was one of only about 10, I think there was about 10 of us total that actually got paid to legalize cannabis. Now, I didn't get paid a lot. I didn't get paid anywhere near what I was making when I worked for the big insurance company. But I didn't care because I was doing something that really matters. I have never had, for me personally, I still chase the excitement of a campaign. It is crazy fun. It is a crazy amount of hard work. I ate more pizza than I can ever imagine. Late nights, early mornings, being on when you didn't feel like being on, when you were so tired of answering the same question or hearing the same negative response.
Have you ever identified as an entrepreneur?
No. Nope. It's funny you should say that.
That's why. This is all entrepreneurship. You've reversed, you saw the future, you reversed engineered it. It didn't matter what it took. You created the world for you to be able to have confidence within cannabis because you saw where you wanted to go. You knew it wasn't here today. You knew it was not possible today. So you went and did things that made it possible for your future, and look where you are. That's entrepreneurship.
Well, thank you. I always have this pseudo entrepreneur. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and I have this pseudo entrepreneur desire. My biggest issue around that is I struggle with chasing clients, chasing the work. Sure. And I've been a corporate gal for a really long time. I function really well in a corporate environment, which is why I ended up ultimately working for one of the larger MSOs. But before I did that, after the campaign, then we went to the legislature. So after the campaign, the start of the next legislative season, I found myself standing in the halls of the State House in Augusta. David saying to me, "Okay, find out, who's your representative. write him a little note saying that you want to talk to him out here. I said, what? No. He convinced me to do it. My representative came out. Now, my representative was I wouldn't say he was a staunch anti-cannabis, but he did not like it, was not in support of the adult use bill that passed, made it very clear to me that he saw no value in this. And frankly, I think that were he not just a nice guy, I think that he may not have even walked out to talk to me. He might have just said like, oh, I'm too busy. It's the first day of the session. Make an appointment with my office. But to his credit, he's now retired. That's Representative Don Marine out of Buxton, Hollis, and a little bit of Saco. To his credit, he came out and listened to me. He told me he was not a supporter. Strangely enough, the legislature put together a committee to revamp the law that was passed. And lo and behold, Don Marine was on that committee. So suddenly I became very valuable to him as he started to learn about cannabis, as he started to learn how this industry should be structured in our state. And he had a big role in a lot of the things that ultimately came to pass in Maine. So from there, let's see. Oh, this is great. So I got a phone call one day from one of the, so there's 3 main dispensary companies in the state of Maine. Curaleaf is one of them, but I got a phone call from a different dispensary. I got a call from, I think it was Glenn that called me, Glenn Peterson from Canuvo. And he said, look, we bring we're interested in having you around. I like you. I've seen what you've been doing. He was a huge proponent of the adult use legislation. We did a lot of campaigning together. Canuvo is a friend, they became a friend. He said, look, we want to have you around. We hire everybody in as bud tenders. If you're willing to come in as a bud tender, we can start working together and see what happens. So again, this was not, I've done retail before. I've done retail, I've done restaurants. It is something that I thought I had put in my past.
Sure.
I had to decide if it was worth it for me to go back to something that I know that I don't love. I don't love being on my feet all day. I love interacting with people, but retail work is hard work. It might not be physically hard like a plumber or an electrician, but it's hard mental work. What I loved about Canuvo is that, they're medically facing. So I had the opportunity to really learn about the benefits of cannabis from the medical perspective. It changed the way I think about cannabis. It changed the way I advocate for cannabis. And ultimately with Canuvo, I managed to move up, and I did get the opportunity to lobby for them a little bit in Augusta. I did do some compliance work for them. And then opportunity came to me that I could go to work for a consulting company in the space. And I took that opportunity. It was scary. I would be I'd be a W-9 employee at that point, which means I'm not an employee, I'm an independent contractor. So again, that entrepreneurship side kind of rears its ugly head. I would be working on new applications in competitive states. I was really excited to do it, and I felt that I was aligning myself with a consultant that had a lot of skin in the game. He knew a lot of big players and whatnot. That situation did not work out for me. So this story is not just a story of millions of successful moments. I had a very negative experience with that. I damaged my own physical health by doing that work. I overworked myself. I put a lot of pressure on myself. I had a lot of pressure put on me. And honestly, I failed. I was not able to keep up with the pressure and the less than positive environment that we had going there. So I left. So now I find myself again with no job, no nothing, We have adult use. It's taking forever in Maine. You know, we still were years away from any adult use businesses opening. So what does one do in that situation? Smokes a lot of weed. It goes
Totally
to
get it.
Indeed.
I get
It goes
it.
to Indeed. So yeah, so the role that I'm currently functioning in, I work in the licensing and regulatory side of things. So my job now, it's a great fit for me. My job now is well, it's fivefold, I like to call it. We
It's
work on new
startup.
license applications. Yeah. That was something. So I hadn't done a lot of startup before. I had, the insurance industry is a 100-year-old industry. It's as old as can be. And a funny thing I say to some people is, I came over to cannabis and I had this, I do tend to have a little bit of a starry-eyed look at things, a very optimistic point of view. And I remember saying to myself, oh, I'm going to get into cannabis licensing and regulatory work on the ground level. And we'll be able to make it so that it won't be bogged down by all the, extra unnecessary rules and regulations that insurance has coupled onto itself over 100 years. It'll be easier. We'll make it more efficient. I'm going to help the government make things more efficient. No, that is not the case. Cannabis is 10 times more challenging, 10 times more difficult. And how do I describe it? We don't use electronic signatures very much. Like, that's the best way I can describe it.
Sure,
in cannabis,
got that.
a lot of regular people, it's so new. And we come from the closet, we come from the basements, we come from an unregulated world. And so regulators almost overdo it. Well, not almost overdo it. In my opinion, regulators definitely overdo things.
Kind of like parents sometimes that feel like they have no control over their children. Like, I love you, mother. Yep. I love you, mom. But sometimes there are these arbitrary rules that are created because of the feeling of a sense of lack of control. And that is why I give the regulators the pass that I do sometimes. I never say that they aren't wrong. Of course they're wrong. Scott, your team, Heather. Scott hit me in South Portland at the grand opening when he's out there taking those signs, and the general manager orchestrating the operations here is out on the road putting up a sign by himself. It's windy, it's shaking. And Scott, do you need some help? No, I'm good. You go get in there. Oh, how's everything going? Oh, you know how it's going. It's startup life. We just opened. You don't even want to know what we dealt with this morning. And he shared with me what you all dealt with that morning. And I looked at him and I said, how does one stomach this? And it's really coming ahead to right now. I now know why you all are Cannabis with Confidence, because you all you got it. You do it. Everybody else is thinking about it. You guys are doing it. That day you did it. You opened, period. Yep. Whatever those things were that could have held up that process, they could have held up that process. Y'all made a distinction. If that doesn't come through, that doesn't shut us down. It's a pivot. We have to do this thing. But because of your ability to see the future and reverse engineer how to do it, because Scott's ability to say today's not going to be perfect, but we're going to get somewhere. Today might hurt, but we're going to get somewhere. You all have put yourself in a position of doing where you don't worry about what everybody else is doing because you're too busy doing yourselves. And that's the luxury that these podcasts have and the people in the media have, is because you're too busy setting an example of doing. Listen, I didn't say that we're setting examples for everything. We're setting examples for doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm getting from the team that you have, Heather, from you as an individual, that you took the risk and said, wow, I've had this career forever. I've had this career. And if I want to have a level of happiness that I had somewhere in that career, I have to go create that industry and that possibility. You took an internship. You volunteered. You advocated. You did the work. You got the reps in. You proved your community. And you were not afraid to go through the system. I'm going to be a bud tender. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be a general manager. I'm going to get licensing. And then you found you, which is the entrepreneurial team player that like Scott's this amazing point guard and he's just passing the ball to people when it's their time to shoot. You know, and you have the, like, what an incredible position of power that it is to help be the person, an individual that does not electronically sign the documents to do things. Like, that's like, thank you so much for sharing that journey with me, because it helped me discover some of my journey. When you said Chris Crane, it helped me put together like how we got here. Very powerful. Thank you so much, Heather, for sharing all of this.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's very important for me to serve as an example, whether that's serving as an example to my son, as, you know, Mom, and he still says it to this day, Mom, you went after something that you really wanted. And this was hard for him. When I first started with Curaleaf, I'm in the corporate office in Massachusetts. I'm driving back and forth to Maine. You know, things have changed drastically with COVID, and I've been here at home in Maine since COVID, you know, for a little over a year.
Sure.
I will be going back, but I mean, my son suffered in a sense, and that's something else, right? That I think is really important for people to line up if they're thinking about coming into cannabis. Now, I've watched a lot of people come into the industry in the 5 years that I've been here. I've seen people come over because they see it as a financial play, as a financial opportunity. I've seen people come into the industry because, oh, it looks so cool. I've also seen a lot of those people leave the industry after a while. One thing that to my leadership's chagrin, one thing that I always make sure to tell folks is this is still a federally illegal substance. What that means is that while there's a very slight risk of this happening to you, it can happen. And that is your business, or your, you know, where you're serving as a bud tender or where you're working at a desk, the FBI could show up at your office, stop things cold. The IRS could come in, stop things cold, take the papers off of your desk, and
put them in this.
You don't know what's going to happen. Yep, they're going to take it. They're going to take them right away. It can happen. It still does happen. The risk to an individual like myself that works for another organization has gone away. You know, I have a friend in the space, or a friend that was in the space. She used to do raid training with her employees. So they would actually do training on what you do in the event of a raid. Now, we don't see raids happening like we used to. And raids were generally something that occur more often on the West Coast than the East Coast. But they do happen here. They've happened here in the last year or so.
Do those raids still happen here in Maine or in the Northeast?
Yes.
When the intent of the operations is legal execution.
So I'm also a criminal justice advocate. I'm a drug policy advocate in general. That's one thing. I started out being a advocate for the plant that I love, cannabis, but now I actually advocate for criminal justice reform in general. And one of the things that we know for sure is that innocent people are pulled into the justice system, even though they're innocent. So the answer to your question is yes. Of course, the result of what happens in a raid like that is based on whether or not you actually are doing something illegal or not. But it can happen. And, you know, I know a little bit about one of the situations that has happened here in Maine. And what it sounds like to me is there was a bit of stigma bashing almost out there. So people went out and reported bad behavior that doesn't look like that bad behavior actually occurred. So what you've got is people out there, either they are jealous of business success, don't love the idea of cannabis in general, and are willing to go out and report things that maybe they don't necessarily understand. And then that generates, an inspection or a raid. Again, doesn't happen very often. It's extremely serious when it does happen.
One of the things I hear there, Heather, is there's a lack of confidence sometimes. If there's individuals talking about one another, there's a lack of confidence in either their product, service, or business.
Cannabis can be cutthroat. That's the best way I can describe it. These are people's livelihoods and livings.
Yes.
And in some cases, passion. And if we're being realistic about this, we've got kind of the old school and the new school. Okay. And the old school, I consider to be people who were in this industry before it became legal. Okay. So they took the big risks, right? They took, they were doing this, potentially putting their families, their homes, doing it for, in a lot of cases, very right reasons, particularly around the medical side of the plant, right? And then you've got what's kind of the new school. The new school is what I would say, what has kind of happened since around 2016. And we don't see it as much in Maine, but we do see it out there.
Totally.
I call it the bro culture. No offense to the bros out there, but I call it the bro culture. It's this culture of winning at all costs, regardless of what the costs are. It's the culture of things like we're seeing in Massachusetts right now, the trial of a mayor who is accused of taking bribes in a small Massachusetts town. It's that culture. It's the, it can be the investment banking culture coming in. These, folks that have never worked with the plant, that don't have a love for the plant, coming in for the financial benefits of the plant. And I'll tell you, my company is accused of this often. I work for a large cannabis company. My argument for that is the industry needs all kinds of players. We want big guys in there with capital being able to support the industry in general, bringing the right level of advocacy, bringing the right level of marketing, right? Because it only benefits all of us. If a big player gets a great marketing opportunity, a new marketing opportunity, the chance to get their brand on a race car during a race, or the chance to do a billboard in Times Square. Those are things that expand the public's comfort level with cannabis in general. So to me, those are good things. It's a question of finding the right big players. And that for me was a big part of why I chose to go with the company that I work with now, with Curaleaf. I saw leadership that had experience in the industry from before this time, and how the company was building up its employee base, its staffing base, with both sides, with folks that are brand new to cannabis, and with folks that come from, the more traditional, I'm using my finger quotes here, the more traditional cannabis route. It's very funny where traditional in this industry means you came from the black market, oftentimes.
Torrin Lyons, who has been on our show from Skokie, Illinois, greenhouse location that is now part of the Curaleaf family. Prior to it being part of the Curaleaf family, he and I had an entire conversation about why he was successful in big box retail and why he is successful as a flagship of that retail establishment that's now part of Curaleaf. And when my friend Melissa and I went to their location to meet with Torrin, as a previous retail executive myself, I saw the success, and I saw it from him. That team was so balanced between, I want to know what's cool on the street, to I'm going to give you your joint before you walk to church. And the transparency and love and communication between the staff members of, this customer isn't going to work well with me. and it wasn't communicated, right? There's nothing verbal. There was this synchronicity of the community there and I watched it firsthand, an individual that was not connecting with the client. And the individual said, my goodness, I have to go take care of something. And here is so-and-so.
They're going to take good care of you.
Specifically is actually better for what you're trying to target. I witnessed this. I'm standing next to Torrent and I said, that's the most beautiful thing I've seen in a dispensary in 2 years. And I said, what's this person going to go do? He's like, probably nothing. Just go ring there. He saw that they were not speaking with each other. And there was something in the dynamic, either one of them, that wasn't connecting to the other. And that type of leadership, game over. Like that. And so that's why, and I see, it's one of the last questions I have for you, Heather, is
sure.
You've shared with us, this value of team building or emphasis of team building. First of all, I would say Curaleaf is as good as its players, and I'm now seeing why they're successful. Because
thank you.
Seriously, thank you. Like for those that I think that maybe struggle, right, with some of the large MSOs, I think if they watch this and they really listen to the conversation, a brand is only as good as the individuals that make up that brand. And I think one of the opportunities that I've had, and I'm so grateful for that from all of you, is I've had the opportunity to meet you all as individuals. And so I can speak to the people, the advocacy, the passion, the love, the grit, the willingness to start over, to build something new. Like that's what I think of when I think of individuals like yourself. And so now, how do individuals out there that are watching this, that are inspired by you, how do they have an opportunity to, one, get in the industry, but to surround themselves with a team like this?
So I think there's a couple of things that people can do. One is educate yourself. So that means listening to podcasts. That means reading the periodicals. That means you get, and I'm going to throw out some resources for people. It's kind of my jam. That's what I do. I like to share resources. I'm oftentimes the person, when a new employee comes in, I'm the one saying, oh, do you know this podcast? Do you know that? So marijuanamoment.com. And then I think, Rye, you're gonna put links to all these in the show notes.
Yes,
right?
Please. You list them.
Great.
And we're gonna have these in the show notes.
Great. Marijuana Moment is the absolute best source of cannabis news across the country that you can find. If you choose no other resource than Marijuana Moment, that's the one I would go with. Perfect. Now, if you've got a little extra change in your pocket, you can also become a Patreon supporter of Marijuana Moment, where you also get access to something that I find really valuable, which is their legislative tracker, where they actually track all the bills. Obviously for someone like me, pretty important.
Very important.
So Marijuana Moment is my number one go-to resource. Now, I also host a podcast. We talked about it a little bit. Marijuana
Where do we
Today.
find that? Marijuana
that
Today.
You can find at, that one you can find at, and I'm going to give you it is mjtodaypodcast.com. That is a weekly podcast that brings together some of the leaders in the industry and the movement to talk all things cannabis, legalization. We talk a lot. So it's a 3-segment show. Generally, we try to talk about something that's happening in the news that week federally, something that's going on at the state level, and then something like industry related. Of course, I'm going to promote this podcast because I am one of the hosts of it.
Amazing.
I am not the best host. I am not the best host. I fell into the hosting opportunity. And again, I love doing it. So I just ran with it. That podcast brings the top people in the industry. So if you want to hear from people that are doing really big things in the industry, if you want to hear from people who are actually advocating for cannabis regulation, whether that's at the state level or at the federal level, that's the podcast that I recommend that you go to.
Brilliant.
Of course. Yeah, it's really good. And it's also produced by a fellow Mainer. So Shay Gunther is the producer. He's been in the space for a really long time. And another Portland, Maine native, or I don't know if he's native to Maine, but he's in Maine now. And that's actually how I got involved. We just became friends through the campaign. And he said one day, hey, will you come on as a guest? I want to talk about Maine. And I said, sure. And he thought I did a good job and I really loved it. And so I've been doing about one episode a month for the last year or so.
Well, and you have been a phenomenal co-host today on WeedBudz Radio.
Not a co-host, but thank you.
You were today. All of our guests are co-hosts. It takes two of us to share love with the community here. Speaking of which,
thank you.
For the community here, how do we stay connected to you?
So the best way that you can get to me is actually on LinkedIn. That is I'm not as young as some of the rest of you, so I do have Instagram, Twitter, et cetera. But LinkedIn
is where we are.
Excellent. So I am on LinkedIn, Heather Sullivan, licensing manager at Curaleaf. Amazing. Very easy to find. I will add you. I would love to add you.
Brilliant. Well, I know that a lot of people are going to connect because I know that there's a lot of people that are in their jobs right now that are saying to themselves that they're not as happy as they could be and they're not as fulfilled as they could be in their work. And I think these stories today help some individuals see that they can do exactly what they're doing and enjoy it by taking a quick look at the cannabis industry. So Heather, thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Rye. I appreciate the opportunity.
Of course, and we're so grateful to all of you for tuning in to another episode of WeedBudz Radio. Of course, head on over to the show notes and you'll have the LinkedIn to connect with Heather. You'll have some of the resources that we talked about today. And of course, you can stay connected and subscribe. We'll see you in the next episode.